Documentary filmmaker David Sumrall raises the curtain on the continued J6 travesty on this episode of United Patriots Uprising with Gary Binford. I'm your host, Gary Binford. Thanks for joining us. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find the video version at YouTube, Rumble, Conservative Television of America, the God Family and Country Television Network, and the Rose Unplugged Media Network. Wherever you go, please click the notifications, sign up, subscribe, and let your friends know about this show. I met David Sumrall and his wife back in 2022 at the Rock the Red Conservative Convention in Greenville, South Carolina. We had several talks after his presentation, and I must admit his presentation just left me in shocked disbelief. Some of the video he showed and some of the footage he has of what really took place and what has really happened to the J6ers that is just so un-American and so evil, I can't even begin to tell you about it, because even if I tried to tell you, it would be hard for you to believe until finally the day comes in which America is going to get to see the footage that a lot of people have, including Tucker Carlson. Well, we can't see the footage, but we can sure talk about it. So you ready to find out? Well, let's get into it. He's an activist, small business owner, citizen journalist, and filmmaker of several riveting January 6th documentaries. I welcome to the show the founder of StopHate.com, David Sumrall. David, how are you?
Man, I am great. I am doing good, and I am glad to be here with you today.
And I'm glad to have you here, and I'm glad that you're starting to make the rounds. I see you're on with Eric Bolling, you're on with Pastor Greg Young, you're on with Alex Newman, you have Tucker Carlson. A lot of other people gracious to you coming on my podcast. There's so much information you have, and I was just spellbound. Met you and your lovely wife at Rock the Red after you spoke in 2022 down in Greenville, and seeing some of that footage and coming to understand more about what really happened on January 6th was beyond belief to me. And my first question to you, we spoke at least 2 or 3 times after you had done your presentation about what was going on, about your life, what was going on and what was going on with these prisoners. Did you think back in 2022, we'd basically still be in the same situation?
Yes. And the long, that's the short answer, man. And here's the reason. Everything's hijacked for politics. And we knew that this would be an election issue. Everyone said it's not. In the very beginning, they just thought it was what it was told by the media, and that it would be, prosecuted and swept under the rug and wouldn't be anything to talk about in the next election. And yet we saw the whole narrative hijacked the whole time from both sides for their own political gain, whatever control or power or funding or fundraisers or, moment in the spotlight, or we're helping J6ers, all this stuff plays in. And that's that uniparty at play. So I'm not surprised that it's taken this long. I'm disappointed that it's taken this long, because with the work that we put out 2 to 3 years ago, this should have been over a long time ago, and yet it's not.
I came back home to New York telling people it's not going to last much longer because David has information. I've seen it. There's other people that have information. I've seen it. I've had Tim Rivers on the show. It was good to see you and Tim together.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that have a lot of information, and I just thought that eventually the powers that be would have to buckle under the weight. However, I also was terrified that they couldn't buckle, because once this comes out, they're done.
They are all done. And I think that's the main point, the complicity. You might not have done the thing yourself, but you know who did, or you know what happened, and you've never done anything to defend innocent Americans who went to protest and were attacked by the police. So that's on you now. And the fact that, there's no accountability from there up the food chain. And that's where the government is the one that the people fear, and it's the wrong way. The government should fear the people, and I don't mean that in a physical way, but it's that respect. It's that I would never speak to my elder that way. I would never treat them with that kind of, animosity or anything. And that's what we're getting the benefit from. and we don't like it, and it's time for a change. But that's the big question: how do you stop it, right?
I understand what you're saying. I had a bus from Ronkonkoma, New York, that was going to take me down there. I knew you were going to be there. I knew a lot of people that was going to be there. And I used to name them. I don't name them on the show anymore because
Right.
I don't want them to get picked up. And you know who they are because they all have podcasts or they're all, people that are, A-listers as far as, the business goes. But
Yeah,
the only reason I didn't go is because I'm a water, beach, sun guy, and it was too damn cold.
it
But you
was.
went. Tell people your recollections from first you being there and what you encountered and what you saw, and then second, once you decided to get involved as a documentary filmmaker and why.
Well, it was against all my natural reflexes. I don't like the cold. I'm from Texas. I'd rather keep the heat on. I like summer, things like that. I break out in little bumps and my nose runs. So, I'm allergic to cold. It's just, it wasn't fun. The wind, I had layers of clothing on, but I didn't have a wind breaker. So the wind was going through all my clothes. And it was like that all day long. It never really warmed up much, and there was that. But we didn't go with the intention of even watching Trump as much as we did to film the event. I took a crew, and we spread out to capture on video what we knew the media would never portray accurately. So that was our focus. And as we were at the ellipse, we couldn't see Trump, we couldn't get close enough, we couldn't really hear the echoing and all. We tried to pull it up on video, and then we heard everyone saying they were going to the Capitol. So we went ahead and made our way down there early to catch the best photographs of these massive crowds coming down. And of course, when we got down to the west side there, we were right behind Ray Epps before the fences ever went down. He's on my videos, and that started the day. And from then, we told people before the first gates went down, this is a setup. There's no way you can have 5 policemen and all those cameras up on top of the building set up and these barricades the way they were and this big a crowd. They knew we were coming, everybody. And now the FBI had all these reports of violence. Now you're saying that, but before you said the FBI didn't know anybody was coming. So which one is it? You can't have it both ways. And that, I think, is the exposure that's happened over the last 4 years. The American public knows, by and large, if you know the story, you know the truth. The problem is the media censors it, and we can't get that story out to the public so they can have the proper emotional response.
I hear you. And the people, the biggest thing he said was everybody, regardless of your political persuasion, had an inkling something was going to happen. I had on my 4 or 5 previous guests prior to the event, all told people they're going to be people in Trump gear that aren't Trump people. Expect somebody to start something. Don't get involved. We were all being prepared for some action, but caused by either Antifa, the Soros people, or the powers that be. They're going to make it look like they're Trump people. Then the people on the left are saying they're going to overthrow the country, they're going to overthrow the government, we need it. And when there was no National Guard there, and when you got down there and could walk in, and I had people that lived in DC, they said someone very famous that was going to go, she went home. When she saw there was no counter protest, as usual on the other side, and when she saw the number, she said, no, this does not look right.
Well, we knew it was a trap. And listen, there's no better way to spring a trap than to take the bait, run with it, let them set the hook, and then dig it out later. And literally, that's what we needed to do to be to the point to where we are today. And yes, it's been suffering and pain and death and torture. But how else would we have exposed how evil this regime or this uniparty, this government system over us is without this kind of expose? And I know it's harsh. The reality is hard and cold. And these guys are paying the price for us. That's what the public needs to know. But you hit on a couple of points. Listen, I was listening to a debate, let's say the other night, with some Antifa people in it, and they were asking them, why do you protest Freedom Corner, where Mickey and and Nicole, and they all stand outside the prison every single night for the last 2 years plus, singing for freedom and doing all the things, listing the names of the guys and really honoring them, keeping that alive. And Antifa goes to protest or counter protest. And they were saying, why do you do that? Why do you do that? You're a follower. If you're just going to counter protest, have your own protest on the other side of town. Well, no, you don't understand the point, Antifa says. Well, okay, then let me ask you this. You like to counter protest. Where were you on January 6th, the biggest protest ever? Where was the biggest counter protest? It didn't exist. And I put a video out just the other day that shows on the west side on the grass, the protesters defending police from other protesters that are dressed a lot like them, but they don't look a lot like them. You can tell, and you know what I'm talking about. They're not with us. They're not our group. And this is what people are seeing more and more of that was hidden by the select committee, their selected evidence committee, they should have called it, because they've changed timestamps. They've been selective with what they will and won't show. And it does paint a different story, but theirs is a fairy tale that was pre-orchestrated. And I think the Officer Fanone story in the West Tunnel, when that all comes out, it's going to really break the back of the entire narrative, show how HBO and Pelosi and the whole government and the sergeant at arms and all the people worked together against us to form this new power, this new control over patriots.
I hear you. Now, if you take it another step further and take it that this was preordained and pre-planned, is it fair to say, because this has been my contention, and as you know, when you have vision, it may take a while to see maybe what was going on, but it seems to me that if something hadn't happened that got Congress off of that floor, if they went inside that building, now there is a deadly threat and they could have used deadly force. Agreed.
And actually, there's talk that there were requests for that kind of massive deadly force against these J6ers. And you have to wonder, who would set people up like that? Who could be so evil to entrap innocent grandmas and kids and crippled people? I mean, we had the whole smorgasbord of America there, every race and color and creed and religion, and all clearly represented, gay people, the whole thing that you wouldn't consider for conservatives. And we were showing that we are the cross section, of Americana, and for them to take it to that point. Listen, I don't think that people understand how that works as much yet, because there's such a deep, we call it control or power struggle, and it's over the American. There's only one way to control a law-abiding population, and that's to criminalize them and make them the enemy, so you can enact different laws and a structure over those law-abiding people. And they have to make us the enemies. That's why they take words like patriot and run it in the ground, to make that a bad thing. Right, so we really have to capture the language and capture, the history, because they're trying to erase it. And if you go for a search on something, you can't find the truth. And that's that media control and the whole complex. So it's really up to the people to do what has to be done to preserve history, to write history, and then to teach history, because they're already going into our colleges and universities and schools teaching about how bad January 6th was. It was an insurrection and Trump did this and Trump did that, all based on lies. And yet they're feeding. These kids will never get over that. They've been taught it once. They will never unlearn it. It's like so many other things that you're programmed with the propaganda. It's harder to overcome. So unfortunately, it's easier to trick someone than it is to convince them. So we have to trick them and show them that they got tricked. It's really a crazy place for us to be as a country, but it's exactly, we have to bring grace back, brother. We have to reach that hand out and say, look, we've been tricked before too. It doesn't feel good. We're not here to hurt you. We're here because we love you. We're brothers and sisters and we're Americans. And this is but they won't listen to that. They've been programmed that we're evil, that we want to fight. The last thing we want is to have to hurt people because we could. And that's not the kind of person you want to have to do that.
Right. Now, everybody, I want to zero in, and anybody that watches the show knows the show is about exposing the communists, socialists, Marxists' attempted takeover of our government and our country. And the magic word, the ding, 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 ding word that David just used was evil. Now, what we're living is straight up cultural Marxism. This is Antonio Gramsci. Karl Marx said revolution, revolution, but we wouldn't do revolution. So Gramsci, the Italian communist, died in Mussolini's prison a long time ago. But he said, let's take over Western culture by changing the culture, by changing the mores and the words. Now, notice the word evil. You say, David just used evil. Notice something about evil. If you say somebody is wrong, that's one thing. Like David and I can be wrong, Donald Trump can be wrong. What do you do to wrong? You debate wrong. But if you say David, Gary, Donald Trump, they're evil, what can you do to evil? You can jail it or you can kill it. And you're even seeing it now, right, David, with the wording of Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Well, what do you do to a threat to democracy? You remove it. See, their words matter. Would you say?
Oh my gosh, that's the most important point. I'm glad you make it. And we don't listen to them enough. Obama, we're going to fundamentally change. What does that mean? Now we know. And Kamala says, I've got 30 million houses to build. Oh, you mean to put the conservatives in camps? Maybe. I mean, are we adding?
They're making them. They're building them.
They are certainly building them, and we don't think they're for migrants because they're, so we're really in, because they want to put them in our houses and put us in the camps. And that's really how they do this. And then they starve us out or whatever, socialism us to death. And I'm not down for that. And I don't think our kids would be, or our grandkids. And it's really up to us. And I tell people all the time and I'm not a doom and gloom guy. You know me, man. I'm positive. I'm upbeat. I try to be inspirational, motivational. And yet I know that this is the last go round, bro. I know that this is really our last shot. We thought that the last one was, and maybe it was, and maybe we're just going through the motions here, but we have to go through them even harder. If there's any chance, any semblance of a normal history that we can go back to what we used to have here, because it's been fundamentally changed. They've taken God out of everything and let evil, like you said, take over. And just the long game that we never played, we've been entertained to death, and we've let that happen, and we've been passive, and now we have to be active. And look, it took decades to get us here. It's going to take some time to dig back out, but we have to start, and it has to be consistent like you, and we have to keep putting one foot after the other, day after day, no matter how hard it gets. And we've done that since January 6th to fight that uphill battle. And we're going to continue to do it until we have freedom for all people. It's not just J6ers, man. The same things have been happening to other communities for decades. The same suits, the same judges, the same system, the same probation, the same overcharging, the same prison conditions. We just didn't know it because it didn't affect us. That's our sin. That's our fault. And now we're paying for that in a way. But the opportunity for everyone to come together and say, we're all Americans. We all deserve better than this treatment like animals. So let's fix that for everyone. It's a crossover moment. It's almost like term limits. And I hope people get on board with it and say, enough's enough. Let's quit that, because it's not me against them. I don't hate my neighbor because he thinks differently or because he's a different political preference or whatever. I don't care. That doesn't bother me. I don't want to kill him. But they want everyone to think we're so violent and we're so intolerant. And that's just not the case. We have to be more vocal and use those words and talk to our neighbors and talk to people. Say, hey, I don't have any beef with you. I'm mad at the people that make us mad at each other, and that's the government.
There you go. Now, speaking of violence, thank God I'm a Christian, born again, follower of Jesus Christ when I met you, because after there's one thing you showed down at Rock the Red in Greenville in 2022. I'm going to ask you to talk about it. There's one thing I saw in your video that had me so mad. When I got back to New York, I wanted to hurt somebody, but God's like, you can't do that. It was the van. It was the people in the van that had on one set of clothing right during the rally. And after the rally, you showed a van behind the Capitol building. And you remember that one?
I do. And that's the culprits. That's the people. That's the unidentified.
Tell them what happened. Tell them what happened. Because I saw that and I'm like, oh, hell no.
When they unloaded the vans and started beating people down, that part with the police in it?
Weren't there people in that they had on Trump stuff, but then after it was over, did they go behind a building and got back in a van and changed clothes?
Yeah, there were several videos that we found. There were probably more. One, the people were changing inside the Capitol. One, they were changing clothes under the bush and tried to chase the guy off that was filming and say, hey, don't film that. They know they're caught. And that's the whole point. And people have been identified. Listen, this is the truth. Have been identified from January 6th and then identified at other rallies, protests, doing the same stuff. They're the agitators. They were identified on January 6th. Taylor Hanson in the one video said, hey, I recognize you, Antifa. You're from Seattle. How can you not understand? And then for Christopher Wray to get there and lie to our face, there was no FBI. There was no, listen, we had 2 months ago, Inspector Lloyd got on the stand and admitted that there were undercover Capitol Police, plainclothes Capitol Police in the crowd. They've never done that in court. We've always said it and everybody believes it, but this is the proof of it, and even for Higgins to say there were 200 people, that's not really proof. It is, but it's not. This guy said it in court, in the transcripts, on the record. Where's the outrage? Where are the people saying this was a setup? You can't have cops in the crowd and lie about it for 4 years and just now tell us you put 1,500 people through your prison system. And now we find out you were using the 1512 illegally against these folks and really threaten them life, liberty, and all that stuff. And they folded to your pressure and took 800 plus plea deals because they didn't want to lose their life. And so many people have killed themselves, hurt themselves, families destroyed, marriage, the whole thing, man. And that's the pound of flesh. Listen, here's the 3,000 number from Pearl Harbor or the 3,000 from 9/11. That's the numbers the government wants. They want to destroy that many lives and families because it's not just one J6er. There's 20 in his immediate family, and there's 40 in his circle, and there's 60 in his community, and it goes on and on. And those ripple effects splinter our society. They fracture our relational empowerment. Basically, we don't have the opportunity anymore to try to talk to someone because we shut that door. We saw what we saw. Y'all killed a policeman that day. You acted like juveniles. You pooped on the floor. They believe all the things they heard the first day that weren't true because the media doubled down and it took longer to come out with the truth, but the lies spread faster. That's why we need the public to share this information, especially before this election, bro. Or this is the last go around, man. We don't have another shot.
I hear you. Now, Tucker Carlson, and you were on the show twice, you said, that's great. Tucker Carlson had tons of footage. Yeah. Mike Johnson, right?
Yes.
From the Congress has tons of footage. I thought they were going to put this footage out. Why haven't we seen the footage yet?
Well, I think we all know the answer to that question, don't we? Because I'm pretty sure all Americans would be on their way to D.C. right now. I think everybody would load up their car, and I don't think they would come empty-handed this time. I think people would be really shocked if they knew what their government has done to them. And that's the reality of it, man. Listen, if all this video came out and people saw, listen, I've had access, from Rock the Red. I've had access to the government database. I know what's in there. You know what's funny? The reporters don't want to ask me what it is. They don't want it to get out. They don't want to know. Their bosses tell them it's not time yet. It's not close enough to the election yet. You can't talk about Roseanne Boylan or Kevin Greason or Benjamin Phillips that died that day. We could talk about Ashley Babbitt because everybody knows but it was her fault, right? No, it wasn't. And the video proves that. We've shown the play-by-play where she pulls the guy and hits him in the face and then tries to take the window to protect it, and they shoot her. So that's murder. Listen, a friend of mine was on a podcast last week. He showed the video of Ashley Babbitt and the video of Roseanne Boylan to these people that never even knew they were dead. 4 years later, had never heard that people died on January 6th. They're just not in the know. And both of them looked at those videos and both of them said, that's straight up murder. That's murder. And so when people that don't have any political interest, they're not vested in the story, they don't care, they're just looking at a footage from history and they say that's murder. That cop could have held her down with one hand. She was tiny. He was big. All those things are true. And when people can see that without being prejudiced and they just see it for what it is, the government can't stop that. That's what's going to snowball on them. And when people find out that this was intentional and that they're trying to crack down this control on the law-abiding citizens and make us domestic violent extremists. Oh, this white nationalist. Oh, you're Christian. Oh, we're scared of you. Or you're a threat to persons or property. You're a threat to property, so we can J6 you. We can put you in prison indefinitely with no due process. for as long as we want, until we decide we're looking for more discovery for 4 years or whatever they want to do. It's not right. It's not fair. And there's no way that we can fight that in the legal system. There's only through politics, and our politicians won't fight that fight for us. So we've got to find a workaround for that, bro.
I want to make a statement. You don't have to comment on this. And then we'll get into, because you named a couple people. I want to bring up William Sarsfield III, but I want to make a statement about David, and then I want to make a statement about who I think actually changed the course of America in a bad way. David has the goods, everybody, and let this sink in. I'm just gonna kind of cursory say this. David has the goods, and if you don't think David has the goods, the proof that David has the goods is he's on my show. Okay, now just think about that. David's been on a lot of shows, and the fact that David's on these shows shows he has the goods. Because if he didn't have the goods, David wouldn't be around to be on our shows. So I'll just leave that at that. Okay. David, I want you to comment on this. I had this revelation maybe 4 days ago, and I've had guests on recently that talked about the history of society of America. And something happened during the China virus that never happened before. And I think it's happening now again. And that is all through the history of this country, especially in the 1900s, and especially I was in college right after the Kent State. Young people, college kids have always wanted to stick it to the man. They've always been rebellious. They would always stand up for what they thought was justice. So wasn't it interesting when they shut the country down with that vaccine, with that virus, and said everybody had to take the vaccine and closed everything up? For the first time in the history of the country, the college kids went along with it. Why aren't the college kids down there protesting for these J6ers?
They don't know. That's the only excuse that I can come up with. They don't know. They're not engaged. It's not their fight. And look, I think the best example I've used for 4 years is Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. Mm-hmm. Until your kid is the one that gets hit by a drunk, you're not going to go to the meetings. You're not going to contribute. You're not going to think about it, or whatever you're special. And look, we all have different gifts and we all have a lane to be in. I get that. But there's also that peripheral, we have to look who's in the mission field next to us and see if we can change gears a little bit and help them up the hill. I mean, this is literally where we are. And J6ers have screamed out for the church. Man, this breaks my heart, dude.
Yeah.
And the church is deaf ears, man.
I know.
Pastors.
I know.
I know. Where in the Bible does it say which kind of prisoner to support?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was all of them. And yet, whoa, separation of church and state or something. I can't support these J6ers. They did juvenile stuff. It breaks my heart for them because they're outstanding patriots. They're ex-military for the most part. They're majority Christian. And the church is not there for the ones that are being thrown to the lions. It's amazing to watch real time, and it's heartbreaking.
I know. And we're going to talk about one in a second. Everybody, I forgot to give you the name, Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders and Bernie's bros did more damage to America than I honestly believe now, in that he mobilized the college-age students he became their Pied Piper. And when Bernie went along with the virus and the vaccine, they went along with the virus and the vaccine, because every other society, every other era, if there was something like the Vietnam War or something, that the college kids would always be against the government.
That's right.
Damn, they're trying to burn the country down for the last 50 years. Yet now they didn't do it there. They didn't do it then. That to me is the damage that Bernie Sanders created because they followed him. Let's talk about William Sarsfield III.
Can I ask you this real quick? Because I think you just hit on something that's really intriguing to me at this point. Is it because we quit teaching civics and quit teaching history, and now those kids that would have had some kind of concept of right or wrong, or even a moral compass to know that war is bad, even though they don't understand you know what I'm saying? All those reasons. But now we don't teach history. Now we don't teach, government like we did. I mean, it's all skipped across. We don't do the founding father stuff. We don't. Of course, God's been removed from everything. So there's that moral emptiness, that void now, or vacuum, I guess would be a better word. But is that where the disconnect is with youth from today? Because they just don't know as much as they did 20 or 30 years ago because of social media and the phones and the whole nine yards. And if it's not on their popular podcast, they're not going to get the information. I see that with adults, and I wonder how much that would be formative for those kids, because we know that's one of Saul's rules for, destroying a whole civilization is, take over the schools, take over the media, take over the government, take over the church, take over welfare, take over everything. And they're doing that systematically.
Academia, Hollywood, right.
And I've got
See,
to
and you're
ask.
right, David. But the thing is, see, they're teaching history, but they're just teaching revisionist history. Like, you grow up now, you actually think it was the Republicans that blocked the civil rights movement,
That's
not the
right.
Democrats. You grow up now, you're being taught that capitalism is bad, right? You grow up now, you're being taught it's evolution, and the creation account isn't even in the schools anymore. So they
And
have
why?
replaced and changed the history. So they're being taught history, but they're being
Yes.
taught bad Marxist history.
And why is because we let it happen that way. We let other people run our business. We let other people raise our kids. We don't even go to the state to look at the school board curriculum to see what they're going to put into books. We just say, whatever, y'all know better, just raise my kids for me and give me back a good citizen. But we know that's not what schools are for. It's just to make them good servants, good slaves, to not think and to take that creative edge out and to make them, more submissive. And I just never liked school for those reasons. I could feel it the whole time I was there, bro. And I'm surprised more people don't, but that's the system we live in.
Well, you were on Alex Newman's show, and you know what Alex talks about. Alex has been on this show 3 times. Alex talks about you've got to get your kid out of these government schools, these government Marxist indoctrination centers.
Please.
It's really, really bad. William Sarsfield, because we were talking about people don't know names.
My boy.
5 years for what?
Yeah,
please.
For saving 2 cops. William Sarsfield lives, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes from me down here in Texas. He's a huge guy. He's probably 6'7" or 6'8" or something. He's, I say he's a giant. He's a big guy, does rock work and stuff. And just saying that to say that if he had wanted to do something bad on January 6th,
could hurt somebody.
He could have done whatever he wanted to probably just about as many people as he wanted to. He could have single-handedly probably cleared that tunnel. I mean, he's a big dude and strong because he does rock work all the time. So he's down there at the bottom of the West Tunnel, just sitting in the car with his wife. She was sick, and she, they'd already tried the ellipse thing, and now they're hearing on the radio that there was things going at the Capitol. And he said, I've got to go down there. I didn't come all the way to sit in the car. And she said, go. So he makes his way down to the Capitol. It's 2:30, 3 o'clock something. And, all the first push, once that happened, nobody knew there was fences or gates or anything. There were no police to tell you no. So we got thousands of people just pouring onto the property. And he's one of them walking up. He makes his way up to the west side. And there's that conflict with the policeman at the West Tunnel. And all of a sudden, here comes Officer Fanone and Officer Moore down out with the body surf. When the police pushed all those people out of the tunnel, the stairs were really steep. So everybody's just body surfing, and they weren't dragging Fanone. You can see it on the video. The guy that got drugged was not Fanone. We've proven that too. I know it's really weird that they lie so much, but Sarsfield's down there. Fanone's on the ground. Fanone says, I have kids. And Will says, I do too. Get up. And he sticks his hand out and pulls him up and pulls him off the ground and makes sure that he's in a safe direction with the other guys. Ron and a couple other guys were standing around helping Fanone back up. Then he turns his attention to Officer Moore and says, would you like to go back up there too? And Officer Moore says, heck no, I'm not going back up there. He said, well, let me take you out here. Walked him completely off the property to an ambulance, told the ambulance driver, I just saved this guy up there. And the ambulance guy said, no way. And the cop said, yes, he did. He saved my life. And they took a selfie together and the whole 9 yards. So they want to put him in jail for years. For what? Is that the trespass? Is it not knowingly or willing? I don't understand if it's saving police, because, man, if I had to do it over again, I would have let Fanone flop it down that crowd and just let whatever happens, happens. Let's just see, because I'm not going to protect those kind of criminals anymore. They coddled him. They held him like a baby. They held his hand. And then when he tried to pull his gun out of his holster, like I think he was planning to do when he got down there the entire time, I think this was the thing, was he was supposed to shoot some people. And when he reached for his gun, you can see about an 18 or 19-year-old kid standing across from him, put his hands up like shocked. don't shoot. And then when he's doing this, 2 or 3 guys next to him see him grab his arm and push his arm down and hold his gun in his holster and push him back up the steps. I'm serious, guys. You've got to see
Who
this.
are
And
we
no,
pushing up? Who got pushed up the steps? Which
Officer,
one of the cops?
Officer Fanone.
Right. That's what
And
I
he's
thought.
the
Right.
same one that he lied, said he
Wrote a
had 2
book.
heart attacks and a brain aneurysm or a
Yeah.
stroke. And he didn't. He's out at the paramedics. He tried to turn his body cam off and he couldn't. I guess he's outside on his body cam. We've seen the footage. We have it. And the paramedic says, "What happened to you?" "Oh, they tried to kill me." He said, "Well, what did they kick you?" "Oh, yeah, they kicked me." "Oh, there's no video of that, you know." And then he sits him down and he looks at his eyes and he says, "I don't see anything. You know, your pupils look good." And he said, "Are you dizzy or anything?" He said, "No." He said, "Well, just sit here and rest until you feel better. You want some water, you know?" And he was not hurt. I mean, I don't understand how he ended up in a hospital picture, all hooked up to all these machines. And when he walked out on his own power with Jimmy, his partner. And Jimmy said, "Where's my weapon?" He said, "I got it." He said, "Well, I'm missing my clips." He said, "I'm missing mine too. We're going to get all new stuff basically and take this other stuff home. I'm missing mine too." He wasn't. So they're stealing. You know what I'm saying? It's all on video. Where's the select committee? Why don't they select that video and show that Fanone's a liar and a wimp? I mean, oh, dude, it's just crazy.
And people, here's the part that breaks your heart, because it would go past you if you don't know this part. But David started by saying William's wife told him to go. His wife is no longer with us anymore. The stress of this. Well, you tell him, David.
The stress, the strain, the finances, guys. You know, this is a real struggle. I don't know if people know what it's like to be attacked with the full force of the Department of Justice. But in about 5 minutes, you're broke. And you're deciding, do you feed the kids or do you feed the dog or do you get rid of the dog or where do you move to? Is there family that can take you in? Because they don't want the carryover onto them, and you can't work anymore. You know, they're going to fire you because they're going to get harassed for having a J6er on staff if they find out. And you can't raise money because the government's going to take the money you raise and say that you can't profit off of this. And yet the officers from that day have made $250,000, $500,000 for the crimes that they committed, being, glorified at the Super Bowl for murdering people and doing horrible things. And, I don't think that, when William's wife passed, man, it really changed him, and of course it would, but that sadness of knowing that she's not going to see that he got justice. I don't think people can ever relate to that unless they experience it. It's hard, man, really hard, because she knows, or she knew. And for him to suffer through that during this for no reason, when he should have been able to take care of her and to help her through that last part of her life, man, it's just horrible. Just horrible.
David, thanks for coming on. Before I ask you to tell people how they can reach you and get your products and find your website, please tell people about the recent Film Fest premiere event you had and how that went and what that was about.
Man, I tell you what, it was probably the best experience of my life. And I'm not just saying that. I had a wonderful time with great, amazing people from all different things, not just J6. I'm the J6 guy, but we had, Plandemic and the vote issues and J6 and Trafficked. We had so many awesome movies and directors and Q&A. We had a panel discussion, and then we had an awards ceremony. It was 3 days. It's Friday evening, all day Saturday and Sunday morning of just films. We did a dozen choice films. We picked them for a reason and put them in order so that they tell the complete story. And it's really just a powerful event, but the event wasn't the purpose. The event was to make a tool for other people around the country or world to be able to share. So we're working on a post-production edited version that we're going to condense all the movies and the interviews and the Q&A and the awards. I mean, listen, it was emotional, it was educational, it was entertaining. We had a great time. And just to spend that much time, a whole weekend with all the family, as we say, was just beautiful. So, that package is being built right now. And I want people to know that you can host your own watch party. That's the point, is to get this link. It's going to be $25 or $30, something like that. And then you can invite as many people as you want. I don't care if you charge $10 at the door, invite 100 people. I don't care. Just $25 link covers however many people you can. We don't care. We're going to ask them to help us, sure. We're going to say, hey, if you're watching this for free, buy a ticket anyway, because you're going to want this link. So don't worry, but invite as many people. They need to see this. They need to see what happened. They need to see how it's all tied together. They need to see it before the election, or it's not going to do us any good. So we've got a little expediency going on there, a little push. But 1afilmfest.com, that's 1A like First Amendment, 1afilmfest.com. And you can still see, and please go back. I don't think the ticket sales for the packages, it's probably still got the live link, so it might be a little confusing. But write that down somewhere, folks. Do something. 1afilmfest.com. We should have it out in a couple of weeks, and I think it's going to be a powerful tool. And what we're trying to do is be the armory of truth and supply the ammunition, the words, the videos, the messages that America needs to see to save it and return it to God. And that's really our whole purpose, brother.
Hey, Dave, David, I was so impressed meeting you, maybe because you were one patriotic, tough dude, and your wife is no shrinking violet either. You two bring the heat. She's bring the heat.
I'm telling you, behind every good man, there's a great woman. I'm just telling you.
Dad, I love you, brother in Christ. Thanks for coming on. Please tell people how they can reach you and anything else you'd like to promote.
My email is david@stophate.com. It's real easy. If you want to follow our social medias, go to stophate.com. Follow us, and you'll see all our different social medias. If you want to help, go to stophate.com/J6, and you'll see 20 different calls to action. Some are absolutely free, like prayer and letters. Some cost you $1 or $2, buying the books and doing things that help share that information. But stophate.com/J6. Please support there. And find somebody to adopt and help carry them through the toughest time of their life. And it would be greatly appreciated by me, but more so by them and their family. So listen, brother, thank you for having me on here today. God bless you.
Thanks for coming on. God bless. There you have it, Mr. David Sumrall. I want to thank David Sumrall for coming on the show and letting you know what really went on January 6th, as much as he could under the circumstances. There are a lot of people that really know what has happened, and they really have put this together, but they're sitting on it for a variety of reasons. I don't know if the reasons are good. I don't know if the reasons are bad, but I will tell you this: God will not be mocked. Evil will not win this battle. Those people will eventually be set free that don't belong in these J6 prisons, and the people responsible for it will get their just due. Count on it. So, David, thank you for what you do. Keep up the good fight. Don't let them grind you down. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Hope you'll subscribe, leave a rating and a review, and be sure to tell your friends about the show. You can find the video version at YouTube, Rumble, Conservative Television of America, the God, Family, and Country Television Network, and the Rose Unplugged Media Network. Same thing. Click that notifications button, subscribe, let your friends know about the show. This is my 4th year, and the first 3 were audio only. So there are more than 125 high-profile guests who have done audio versions of this podcast. You can find that by going to the audio archive, the United Patriots Uprising audio archive, at radioinfluence.com. Just some of the guests that you will hear: Christina Bobb, Ben Carson, Monica Crowley, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, Pastor Jack Hibbs, Tom Holman, Brandon Tatum, Carrie Lake, Mike Lindell, Judge Janine Pirro, Carol Swain. That's just a few of the guests that you will hear. And what they had to say a couple years ago is just as valid today, because we're still in this fight to save America. So that's it for now, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So until the next time, this is your host, Gary Binford, saying, God bless you, God bless your families, and God bless America.